So I was impressed with you at the conference because you came guns blazing with your whole team, set up right in the middle of all the action.
What were you expecting me to do?
I don't know, but that was awesome.
Well,
I came into the first day of the conference, and Shawn was there at 8 a.m. with his full film crew, 3 guys. They had cameras, lights, camera, action, and they performed 3 live podcasts back to back to back.
Yep.
And Shawn standing at a high boy, and very impressed by his work ethic and just his stamina just to keep it rolling. And it was good. It was really good. And then we went into our presentation after that. So let's talk about that a little bit. Our presentation was be the show, not the commercial. And, you know, we presented to a bunch of caterers that really a lot of them don't have social first mindset. So let's talk about why, you know, we thought that was a good presentation to give to these catering companies and kind of what the premise of be the show, not the commercial was.
Well, high level, I'll share a story. Always we learn through lessons and stories, and I will share that I have a young boy. His name's Colleen. He's 7 years old, and I've got a daughter, Mila, and she's 5. And I remember when Colleen was really small, you know, the first time, there's always this hesitation as a new dad to when do you bring technology into your life, and when do you let, you know, your child actually watch a video. But I remember, I don't know, he was 2 years old maybe. He could barely speak, but like 2 years old, and was like, yeah, you can watch a YouTube video on your phone, on my phone. So I gave him the phone, and he was watching a YouTube Kid cartoon, and, you know, small, little tiny boy interacting with daddy's phone, looking at it, watching a YouTube Kids video. And as he's watching the video, he's engaged. But then there comes an ad for another toy, which was a cartoon. And the first button that I watched my son hit was skip. Like,
get it out of my way.
He intuitively knew as a child that he didn't want his story interrupted. He didn't want his content interrupted. And that's the premise of thinking of me as a human. You know, I remember the first time a DVR came out where I could record a show and then go back and fast forward through the commercials and just watch the content.
Right.
Like, humans don't want to be advertised to.
Right. You know,
we want to be educated and we want to be entertained.
I remember that when smartphones were, you know, just becoming popular, it was right around that DVR time, and then some stuff you could fast forward and some stuff you couldn't. So when a commercial came that you couldn't fast forward, you immediately picked up your phone and watched what you wanted to watch on your phone until the commercial was over, and then you went back to your show. And that's what you're trying to say is people want the show, they do not want the commercial. So that's why we talked about be the show, not the commercial.
That's it. People want to be educated, they want to be entertained, or they want to be inspired. And the premise of being the show is being real, being authentic, being who you are. I mean, no one goes to social media to be advertised to. Are we advertised to? And let me be clear, I am not against advertising, but there is a very small percentage of really good advertising that does a great job of telling a story that gets you entertained or educated or inspired to actually buy a product. But most of the sales stuff that we see on the internet and in real life is sale, 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 sale.
What are they doing here?
They're selling, Mortimer.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Like, you know, if you go to, you know, a bazaar or a market where there's people selling things. I mean, National Restaurant Show. I'm going to be at the National Restaurant Show, and there are lots of salespeople that will be on the floor, and instead of engaging and telling the story about, you know, the products or the services or the pain points that they're suffering, they're just trying to sell you something like you feel like you're in a used car. And that's a terrible sales
right.
Like, be a magnet with a story. Tell me a story about why are all the most successful restaurants. I'm looking around and I see all of these successful restaurants at the Toast booth. Well, what are they doing at the Toast booth? Now I'm engaged. Now I want to go there. And that's just the premise for everything that we do. It's be the show, not the commercial. Create content that is different. And the way that you're different is that you're unique. I mean, the show that you do, Barbecue Like a Boss, That's something that you developed a show mentality versus a scattered approach of posting a bunch of different stuff on the internet. You came up and your team, you and Matt, and now it's a much bigger team, but you have Barbecue Like a Boss. Now you have this podcast. These are multiple shows that you produce that allow you to create long form content, short form content, clipping up a video from here so that we can post it on LinkedIn and I can share it on my LinkedIn feed for people that don't know who Duce Raymond is, that don't know, Duce is Wild, that don't know about Barbecue Like a Boss. These are all opportunities. I mean, how many people I know in Chicago now that I can just send to you for their catering needs? I mean, I have all these catering companies. I mean, all these tech companies that are going to be in Chicago, and they should be catering with you.
Absolutely.
Why? Because we're doing show content together.
Yeah. Another thing we talked about at the conference, and that I'm really starting to take more to heart, and it's kind of hard to digest, is you always have to be thinking that you're creating content for a new viewer. A lot of people get caught up in like, oh, I'm putting out the same content, or they're just scared to say, oh, I put out a trimming brisket video, I can't do that again, but actually there's so many new people and your content gets pushed out to non-followers more than followers, especially on the new algorithm stuff. The TikTokification has changed the way people see content, and a lot of time you're in front of people that don't know who you are, which is great actually, because you want to reach new people, but people are scared to put out, content they've already talked about. And that's something I'm trying to get more comfortable with, is telling the same story. I've showed how to trim and cook a brisket 20 different ways, and I know now that I'm going to have to show it 20 more different ways, because that's what people want to see.
It's play the hits. If you're a creator, if you're a music, like whatever you do, if it resonates with an audience, our natural state as a human is to not want to repeat ourselves, because we don't want to sound crazy.
Right.
Every time you tell the story, you should be getting better at telling the story.
Right.
One of the examples I use all the time is I study comedians like Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock and Kevin Hart, and understanding these comedians, before they go on Netflix, they have told that joke hundreds, thousands of times, maybe tens of thousands of times, that same joke where they changed one word, they changed an inflection point. They paused. They changed how they were standing on the stage. But they do that over and over and over again, and they learn until they get to the next Netflix special, and the act is so tight that you're like, oh my God, I have to share this with somebody else. You have to go see their new Netflix. That's such a great
example. And I heard that specifically about like Joe Rogan's last Netflix special, and them talking about how many times he's giving, though, like he went up there and just talked for an hour and a half with no notes, just straight up telling those jokes exactly how he wanted to tell them based on the reactions that he got doing it the previous 1,000 times. And it just came off like he was a complete pro, which he is, but it was amazing to watch, and kind of knowing that background of it, how much work and how much effort went into him getting to that point,
I mean, that goes, the formula that we shared on stage, which is, how do you create quality content? Like, how do you prepare for a podcast? How do you prepare for a video? And for me, the answer is quantity plus speed plus consistency will eventually equal quality. That quantity, speed, and consistency. And the problem is we all want quality first.
Right.
We want the best video. We want the Netflix version of our speech, our TED Talk, our video to be perfect. And it just doesn't happen like that.
Right.
You got to put out a quantity at speed with consistency before you can sit in front of Shaquille O'Neal and not shit your pants. I mean, that's the truth. Sure.
I keep on thinking about, how many times do you think Uncle Dave has told the Sweet Baby Ray story? How he got started and how his business evolved and everything. I mean, just, thousands of times. And it got to a point where he would tell it in kind of like, he said it so many times, he was disinterested saying it.
Yeah.
But in the last 5 years, I've noticed where he kind of slows down and says it more like a story that someone hasn't heard before. And I don't think anything is prompted him to do that. He just probably realized he was sounding like, I'm bored of this story. I've told it so many times, but I've noticed recently that he starts telling it like more like a story and more like someone hasn't heard it before.
I think that's one of the most important things. And I learned that, helping my grandfather write his story. We self-published his book, The Harvest, out of a Bulgarian farm boy, became wealthy in La Jolla, California. And I remember going to writers' conferences, interviewing people and interviewing him. And the more that you tell your story and the deeper work that you do about, well, what day of the week was it? What was going on? What was happening historically during that day that you got that devastating news? What did it smell like? And what did it look like? And you bring somebody into that story, that's everything. The more that Dave does that, the more that he does that work, the better the story gets. Like, how does a story become like
over time?
It's so good that somebody else shares that story.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a game of telephone. It's like, dude, I heard you tell this story on stage about this orange tree in front of your restaurant. And I tell that orange tree story to remind myself that I have to tell the orange tree story more.
You
have every single person that's listening to this has some version of their origin story.
Right.
Has something that they can work on that somebody goes, wow, that's a great story. Well, don't stop telling it. Tell it more.
Right. I mean, that's something interesting that I've started telling my story a little bit differently recently, because a lot of times people want to see me and Dave. So Dave tells his story, and his story is more, from very humble beginnings. They grew up on welfare on the west side of Chicago, and not, they from nothing. They had, a single mother. They moved around a lot, and it was a very challenging time for them growing up. But they didn't really know any different. And my story is not that. I grew up in the suburbs of Wisconsin, and, very upper middle class upbringing. And so when I got into business, my back wasn't against the wall like they were. Every single, time they turned around, they needed to perform to do well. And when we got into business, Dave had just sold Sweet Baby Ray's to Ken's, so it wasn't like that for us.
Yep.
And I didn't learn, though, until we grew, we expanded, we bought Meeting House, the event planning company, and then things weren't going well. We had a falling out with the people we purchased from, and then our backs were against the wall. Dave's like, I'm not putting any more money into the business. Either we figure it out or, the business is going away. And it wasn't till then, till we really started to change things around. Also coincided with my sobriety, which had something to do with it too, I'm sure. And, it's not always what you have given to you, but it's what you have to learn from in business, and everybody has their own path. And I think that most businesses have to struggle before they succeed. And that was my case anyways, for sure.
That's why we do the work that we do, is that like the more that we ask questions and the better the questions are, the quicker we get to the truth. And the truth makes people stop. I mean, to be honest, like one of my favorite David Meltzer quotes is, the truth vibrates the fastest. When we hear the truth, we stop. Like, this is what I want when I go to a trade show, when I hear a speech, when I listen to a podcast. Stop bullshitting me and just fucking tell me the truth. Like, where was the shitty part? Because we all experience shitty parts. Yes, we see, you're successful and you have 100 restaurants and you're profitable and you're about to go public. Like, that's fucking great. But tell me about like when your business partner tried to screw you over. And what did you learn from that? Because obviously now you have all these other business partners. And like, those are the stories that I chase on a daily basis, because when somebody tells it to me, it reminds me of all the shit that I went through. It's like when I was in college, I remember I thought I was going to change my major to be a business major. And I took a couple business classes and I was bored out of my mind. I could not believe that, like, how is this the business curriculum? And then I remember they brought in an entrepreneur to come and speak to the hall, hundreds of people. And he started telling his story about all of the shit he went through, about the marketing, about the branding, about the investors. And I'm sitting there taking all these notes. I'm like, this is what I want. I need more of this.
Right.
And I mean, to be honest with you, that's why we do the work that we do at Cali Barbecue Media, is that we want to tell more of those stories. Like, it's not about me. It has nothing to do. Like, I'm just lucky to have all this technology to be able to sit down in front of people and, you know, be willing to say, hey, are you willing to sit down and have a conversation about how did you do it? How did you fail? What did you learn?